The story begins with two scientists watching random acts of violence, recorded only one day earlier on CCTV cameras. Warren finds the entire scene fascinating and thanks the police department for letting them have a closer look. Clive thinks it's horrible what people are capable of doing and wonders when all of this was recorded. But apparently, everything happened last night. The captain walks in on them and asks if they've seen everything they wanted to see. Before leaving, Warren asks to speak to the captain in private, and both of them go into the corridor to be alone. Clive spies on them and sees his colleague giving the captain an envelope, but he doesn't know its content. At night, Clive talks to his ex-wife and accuses her of spreading rumors about him being abusive during their relationship, but she claims they aren't rumors, he really was abusive to her. This pisses him off, and he slams the phone against the living room table, breaking it. In the morning, he goes to Cambridge University where Warren was experimenting on someone. Clive is worried and thinks they should first experiment on chimpanzees rather than humans. He recognizes the patient as being one of the hooligans from the police station videos and questions his partner about it. He accuses Warren of bribing the police captain to give them a prisoner to experiment on. The scientists are working on developing an inhibitor for violence, and if they succeed, they will be able to cure people who have anger control issues just like Clive does. Later that night, the patient goes into a state of frenzy and attacks Warren, who was trying to calm him down. The man frees himself and wants to run away, but Clive gets in the way, trying to stop him. Suddenly, he gets hit in the head from behind and falls on the ground unconscious. Warren hit him over the head with a fire extinguisher, but the blow was fatal and the man died on the floor. The two men agree to bury him somewhere outside, while Warren claims they are in this together, but maybe they should experiment on chimpanzees next. The inhibitor was ready, but now they needed to find a way to mass distribute it. Warren suggests using a virus as a delivery system, and Clive thinks that Ebola might be the best candidate for this. They manage to bring a live chimpanzee and begin experiments to see how the inhibitor works. The ape was subjected to violent videos, hoping to trigger an emotional reaction, maybe turning it violent. The weeks have passed and the plan had backfired. The ape was injected with the virus, but instead of curing its anger, it only amplified it. Clive remarks that they've created a rage virus, which pisses off his colleague who attacks him. After a short struggle, Clive decides to quit and leaves the university, tired of listening to Warren's ideas. Everything they were doing is starting to get to him, and he calls an animal rights organization, telling them about the experiments they've been doing on animals. He then takes a gun and blows his brains out, feeling guilty about everything. Warren talks to the people who've been financing his experiments, including paying for the bribes to the police captain. He claims the rage inhibitor was a failed experiment, but his financiers are intrigued and think the virus might have other applications. Warren hears noises coming from the lab and goes into the corridor to see what was going on. The ape was able to free itself, and just as he opens the door, it jumps on him, biting him on the neck. It didn't take long for the virus to spread from ape to human, and Warren's anger was now amplified tenfold. One day later, in one of the university's parks, a family of 5 were enjoying a beautiful day and having a picnic. The oldest kids are bored and claim they don't want to be here, but it's their mother's birthday, so they can't leave. The dad doesn't like Sid disrespecting his mother like that and calls him a smartass. He threatens the son with a beating, but he calms down quickly and the two of them hug it out like father and son. Liam, their youngest son, wanders off and finds something hiding in one of the trees. It was a monkey, but the monkey wasn't friendly and instantly attacks him, puking blood all over him. The father and son quickly intervene and kick the animal with their legs, knocking it unconscious on the ground. The paramedics quickly arrive on the scene, but the mother was panicking and couldn't stop herself from crying. There is something wrong with Liam as he goes into a state of frenzy, convulsing and barely standing still to be treated. Just like the ape, he starts puking blood, but luckily nobody else gets infected because the paramedics are wearing masks. The kid is taken in the ambulance and rushed to the hospital while the family follows them from behind. Once they were gone, Warren and a bunch of other infected come out of nowhere and attack the people in the park. The family is desperate and tries to stay close to the ambulance, but they couldn't help but notice that something was happening outside. People were behaving violently and attacking each other, but they had no clue what was wrong. There was an accident on the highway, so the ambulance is forced to stop. But when the doors open, Liam and the paramedics were all infected and looked like monsters. The boy jumps towards the car, threatening the family, so the father drove into him, smacking his son and getting the hell out of there. A couple of days go by and the family ran out of things to eat, but things were far from calming down. Citizens were instructed to stay inside their homes and not attempt to approach airports. The family decides to leave anyway and head towards the train station, but sadly this place too was overrun with infected people, and there was panic everywhere. The mother remembers that one of their family friends has a yacht that they keep docked near St. George's Wharf. If they can get to it, maybe they can take the river to someplace safe. but it wasn't going to be easy. The roads are filled with infected people and they nearly crashed a couple of times, but they made it all the way to the London Bridge. The dad is forced to crash through one of the blockades, but this blows the tires and they couldn't use the car anymore. He asked his oldest children to jump in the river and swim towards some boats that were floating about. They are quickly overrun from every direction, but him and his wife stay behind to give their kids enough time to escape. After one final hug with the parents, the oldest kids jump in the freezing water and swim towards the boats. But sadly, their parents are surrounded from every direction and there is nowhere left for them to go. 29 to 32 days later, the city was mostly abandoned, and the only ones still walking the empty streets are the infected. One of them is attracted to the smell and spots something hiding on the rooftop of a nearby building. He continues walking through the alleys and sees a woman in the distance. It rushes towards her trying to bite her, but it wasn't a real person. It was just a mannequin disguised to look like a real person. Someone shoots the infected straight in the head, causing it to explode. It was a lone survivor who remarks that something attracts the infected to them, and somehow they know not to attack each other. Disease, anxiety, even rage affects the way people smell, and he thinks that might be the reason why the infected are drawn to them. The man continues walking through the streets, killing off any infected he could find, remarking that the city belongs to him now and he's gonna cleanse it from the infection. However, he isn't entirely alone. There is another doing the same thing he was doing. The other person is on top of the building and he shoots him straight in the chest, but luckily he didn't die. He was wearing bulletproof armor that stopped the bullet from passing through, saving his life. The man used to be a cab driver, and when this thing started he didn't have any guns. Then he came across the military roadblocks that got overrun and he was able to stock up on everything he could get his hands on. He spends most of the nights alone, talking to his dead wife, and all he has left to remember her by is an old picture. This was his lucky night, because he spots the other shooter camping on top of another building nearby. He plans his revenge and wanders the streets once again, searching for something to use against the shooter, and he eventually finds it out of pure luck. He uses perfume to gather a large pack of infected and lure them into one of the alleys. The other soldier was being cornered and wanted to turn back to his car, but when he gets near, the man throws an entire bottle of perfume straight on top of him. The man had no idea why, but soon it was quite obvious. The pack of infected was attracted to the powerful smell of the perfume and quickly found him and jumped him. There were too many of them for him to take out alone, and he was eaten alive in mere minutes. The man watched in satisfaction the entire scene, but eventually it was too much even for him, so he threw a grenade which caused a massive explosion, killing all of the infected. The man's name is finally revealed, Hugh Baker, and he's happy to teach the shooter a lesson for messing with him. This is his city, and he wasn't going to let anyone take it from him. 38 to 42 days later, a man wakes up in the hospital with a doctor and a nurse watching over him. The man was unconscious the past couple of days and doesn't have any ID on him. He was one of the hospital rescues. He eventually talks, but has no clue what happened to him or how he got there. After the doctor leaves, the woman claims her name is Sophie, and they are inside a hospital tent within a camp. The city's been evacuated because the people are sick and behaving violently because of some virus. She is here with her younger brother Sid, after they lost both of their parents during the initial phase of the outbreak. The man apologizes and says his name is Clive, the scientist that was working on the inhibitor to control people's rage. Meanwhile, another man was taken prisoner by the soldiers and brought to the camp. Because he was being violent and refusing to cooperate, he was locked inside a temporary prison until he calms down. Sid saw the entire scene and is curious to know more about him, claiming he knows him from somewhere. He used to run a newsagent's in Piccadilly. He remembers buying comics from there sometimes. There are infected people on the outside of the fence, but the soldiers weren't killing them. They were just waiting for them to die of starvation. The soldiers haven't said a word as to why they are keeping him there, but he thinks it's because they don't want them to get infected as well. But the man isn't so sure about their intentions and has doubts. He eventually says his name is Hugh Baker, the guy that was living alone in London, cleaning the infected on the streets, claiming the town belongs to him. Sid talks to his sister and tells her about Mr. Baker, accusing the soldiers of treating him badly. He thinks they are prisoners inside this camp and doesn't like it. In fact, he wants to escape. Sophie tells him about Clive, the scientist who knows a lot about the outbreak, claiming it was started because of a virus. A loner infected wanders the empty streets alongside the camp, barely able to walk anymore. He is quickly taken out by two of the guards who wanted to keep it quiet and avoid waking up the entire camp. Sophie interrogates Clive, demanding to know more about the outbreak and why he knows so much anyway. He tells her the truth, revealing that he was a scientist working with epidemic viruses and experimenting on monkeys. Sophie is shocked to hear this. especially since her younger brother was killed because a monkey attacked him. Sophie gets emotional and tells everything to her brother, but maybe Clive doesn't know what he's talking about. He's on a lot of morphine to calm his pains. The soldiers eventually agree to release Hugh from his prison, just as long as he behaves and doesn't do anything stupid. The three of them go inside the hospital tent and interrogate Clive further, asking questions about the outbreak. He tells them what he told to Sophie, that the outbreak started because of a virus. But it wasn't natural, it was man-made inside a laboratory. The virus was created for a reason, and that reason was to control people. But he doesn't know who it was intended for. Even though a lot of the infected people were killed, this outbreak is far from over, not by a long shot. Hugh doesn't feel safe here and wants to escape, and he convinces the others to listen to him. They ambush one of the guards that was stationed outside and steal his suit, disguising themselves to look like them. They get close to the main gates, but the other guards see blood on their hazmat costumes and get suspicious. A small struggle erupts and the guards are quickly incapacitated, but the alarms go off. The group makes a run for it, heading for the forest nearby, but Sid and Hugh stay behind to provide cover. Sadly, both of them get shot multiple times and fall dead on the ground, while his sister keeps running deeper. She and Clive stop to catch their breaths, and he sits down for a second. He confesses that the wounds on his face are self-inflicted. He tried to kill himself by shooting himself in the head. He apologizes for not telling her the truth, but he needed her help to escape. Sophie tries to calm him down and gives him a passionate kiss, saying it's for her family, her brothers, her mom, her dad, and for all of London. But she had other intentions. While he was distracted, she put the gun against his head and blew his brains out. She blames him for the outbreak and for her family's death, and has no remorse standing over his body. Sadly, this is the end of the road for her as well, because the soldiers catch up to her from the helicopter and shoot her straight in the head, ending her family line completely. The story begins in the Bergen refugee camp, somewhere in Norway, where people have built tents and are trying to survive the cold weather. Clint Harris is a big-shot reporter who came all the way from the States to meet Selena. There's been an outbreak in the UK and the entire island has been quarantined, but nobody truly knows what really happened or how everything started. Clint wants to get to the bottom of it and wants Selena's help in getting to London. That's where the virus broke out. She was in the middle of everything when it started, and even though she made it out in one piece, she lost a bunch of people she cared about and had to do terrible things to escape. She remembers an intimate moment with her husband while having dinner together and discussing a gift she had just received. She breaks down in tears and decides to help Clint go back to London and hopefully find out the truth about the outbreak. Clint has a small team of reporters consisting of Trina, Derek, Hirsch, and Accord. When things got too serious, the United States took control and surrounded the country with its military, creating a quarantine zone by blocking all entrances and exits. Clint has a plan, but they need to get to Scotland where the quarantine is weak enough to let them slip past. Their helicopter is intercepted by a fighter jet, which asks them to turn back or risk getting shot at. A few warning shots are enough to convince the pilot that it's not worth going further and he is forced to land. They were about 9 miles from Sundberg and needed to find a way to get there fast. Selena's escape from the quarantine is legendary, and everyone knows about it, but Derek doesn't like acting like she's in charge. Hirsch wanders off from the group and runs into a couple of people, but there is something wrong with them. Before he realizes what's going on, the people charge at him, wanting to harm him. Luckily, Selena takes out her machete and jumps to his defense, attacking the infected and saving his life. This place isn't as safe as they had initially hoped, and she's curious to know what's the plan now. Sitting outside in the open is dangerous, and they need to find a place to hide. Luckily, there is a hotel nearby, and the group runs towards it, but one of the infected was running after them. It attacks them from behind, but they are able to get inside and close the door just in time. Clint claims there is a supply boat waiting for them in Sundberg in the morning, but they need to leave tonight if they want to make it on time. Selena doesn't like traveling at night. It makes it dangerous to spot and defend against infected. Eventually, she caves in, and Clint wants her and Derek to hotwire a car so they could drive to Sundberg, while the rest search the hotel for possible infected. Derek is able to start one of the cars in the parking lot, but he drives away, leaving Selena to fight off several infected alone. Inside, Hirsch and Trina go searching through the dark corridors when they hear strange noises. He accidentally slips and falls inside an elevator shaft, but luckily he was unharmed. He fell on something soft. Unfortunately, something soft meant a group of infected all stacked on top of each other who want to tear him apart. Trina helps him escape, but the infected climb as well and follow them. Derek returns with the van and slams into one of the infected outside, and then saves Selena. Things quickly escalate inside and the group makes a run for it, with tens of infected coming through the corridors. The van slams inside the hotel and everybody rushes inside without a second to spare. So far nobody's been infected and everyone makes it out alive heading towards Sumburg. They arrive at the docks, but the ship wasn't there yet, so they find an empty bar. Derek claims he didn't abandon Selena. He may be an ass, but he'll never leave anyone behind. He's sorry for scaring her. While everyone finds something to drink, she finds the strongest alcohol and turns it into a Molotov cocktail. The group spends the next few hours drinking and playing cards, failing to realize that one of them went missing. Out of nowhere, Hirsch returns, being chased by an infected and screaming for help. After quickly dealing with the threat, he claims he's been bitten and was now infected. While everyone panics and doesn't know what to do next, Selena knows what needs to be done. She takes out her machete and attacks Hirsch, ending him right in front of the others. Trina is terrified and calls her a murderess, but Selena quickly brings her back to reality. The incubation period for the virus is only 20 seconds, meaning that after you're bitten, it only takes 20 seconds until you turn. She wants everyone to barricade the bar and find something to cover their faces. If not, they risk getting infected by splashing blood. Trina and Hirsch were romantically involved and she holds a grudge on Selena for killing him in cold blood like that. Clint tries to comfort her, saying it was the right call, but she says it's not fair. It doesn't take long for more infected to arrive and try to break inside, but so far the barricade was holding up. More of them come through the window, and the machete comes in handy for close combat. Punching, kicking, stabbing, the group does everything they can to fend off the attack, and the masks were keeping them safe from infection. Trina was plotting something. She sneaks up behind Selena and bites her hand. She then accuses her of being bitten by an infected, claiming she's seen it happen. She is forced to defend herself against the group, accusing Trina of biting her and claiming that if it was an infected bite, she'd already be one of them. Luckily, the boat arrives at the docks, and the group makes a run for it, being chased by tens of infected. The Molotovs they created earlier come in handy as Derek throws a couple of them. Everyone makes it aboard the ship and Selena saves Trina in the last second, even though she didn't deserve it after what she did. Captain Harlan is an old friend of Clint's and owes him a favor. That's why he agreed to help him sneak into London. There are plenty of supplies and weapons on board, and Derek gives Selena a pistol, remarking that it's better than her machete. But getting from Scotland to the mainland wasn't going to be easy because the entire island was surrounded by American warships who were stationed there to secure the quarantine. If they try and run, they're gonna catch them and confiscate the boat, so the captain is worried. He owes a lot to Clint, but he doesn't owe him that much and doesn't want to risk it. They might be able to lose them in the Orkney Islands, but they really shouldn't hold their breaths. If they fire on them, he's turning around. Selena wants everyone to wear life jackets, because the soldiers attacking them might think they are defenseless victims and won't shoot. The plan was to unpack all the gear once they get to shore, but out of nowhere a fighter jet comes flying towards them and bombs them straight out of the water. The boat is completely destroyed and Selena can't see any of the other group members. Trina was instantly killed and her body ripped in half, still floating on the water. Derek also took heavy damage, and the explosion hurt both of his eyes. He couldn't see anything anymore. Luckily, Clint was unharmed, and both of them helped Derek swim all the way to the shores, but it wasn't easy with a blind man. Selena cleans out his wounds while Clint starts a fire. If they don't get heated soon, they're gonna catch pneumonia. They talk about Derek in private, remarking that both of his retinas are fried and he'll never see again. Clint doesn't want to abandon his friend, or worse, kill him, and calls her a heartless bitch. She had no intention of abandoning him in this condition, but they need a plan, especially if they want to make it to London with a blind man. They have 1,000 kilometers to go with no food, no shelter, and the only weapons they've got are a machete and her pistol. Many months ago, Clint had just returned home after spending 6 months in Iraq and he just wanted to sleep and relax. His boss calls him and asks him to turn on the TV because there is something major happening in London and he needs to get on top of it. Images of people attacking other people went viral, but nobody knew what exactly was going on and why were people violent like this. Seeing how serious the situation was, he agreed to fly to London and get the story. But first he needed his partner. Derek is one of his close friends, but he was kept hostage by some terrorists in the Middle East and he wanted a break as well. Eventually he agrees to help and they both head to the New York City airport, but the place was packed. The situation turns to chaos as soon as a soldier asks them to put away their cameras and stop filming, but luckily they were able to get aboard the airplane. Clint notices that there are 3 doctors aboard the flight, and all of them are working for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Unfortunately, their flight was diverted to Frankfurt, so they had no way of getting to London and finding out the truth. They meet with Major Sanders, a good friend of Clint's, who offered to show them what they were up against. Together they fly towards Newport on the Isle of Wight, where US-led NATO forces had set camp. The plan was to go into London and clean the city from the infected because apparently the UK army was completely overwhelmed. They were also doing experiments inside the camp, injecting prisoners with infected blood to see how they react. One of these prisoners is a terrorist who quickly turns into an infected and attacks one of the doctors. The virus causes extreme, uncontrollable aggression, so the major was forced to kill both of them. Clint is shocked by everything they had just witnessed, but he still wants to get into London and find out the truth. He reads the newspaper and finds out about Selena, who survived a massive attack that happened in Manchester. In the present, the two of them are running from the infected who were chasing them. Derek was waiting by the fire, unsure of what was going on around him, but Selena quickly takes out the freaks that were after them using her machete. Derek claims he's freezing, so they find an abandoned house where they plan to spend the night. They don't like staying in one place for too long, but they don't have any other options. Derek collapses on the ground, accusing severe pains and going into a delirious state. He has a fever, but it's not because of the flu. He actually has an infection from his wounds. If they don't find some antibiotics soon, he's not gonna last much longer. He goes unconscious and has nightmares about his time spent as a prisoner in Iraq, but Clint tries to calm him down. In the morning, they head into a nearby town where they spot an abandoned truck in the middle of the street. While Selena goes to siphon some gas from other cars, Clint asks Derek to teach him how to cold start the engine, but he wasn't very cooperative. Eventually he tries his best, but he crosses the wrong wires and the thing short circuits, electrocuting him. They all climb in the back of the truck and decide to spend the night there, hoping to try again in the morning. During the night, a pack of infected walk beside them, unaware that they were hiding in the truck. Derek starts moaning, which attracts them to their location, but luckily they went straight for the driver's seat, thinking that someone was there. They survived the night without further incidents, but the driver's seat was busted and there was broken glass everywhere. Clint tries a second time and is able to start the truck, so the group heads towards their destination. After driving for a couple of hours, Clint sees movement on the road ahead, so the group stops to check it out. They are confronted by three guys who point their rifle at them, demanding them to stop. One of the men orders them to start talking and Clint complies, but Selena was keeping quiet. She surprises him and headbutts him, causing the man to drop the weapon. She disarms him and turns the situation in their favor, but the man claims he only wanted to hear them speak because he needed to make sure they weren't infected. Clint asks for help, remarking that their friend needs medicine because he is sick and they could use whatever they can spare. The man and his people don't have much. The only reason they are out here in the first place is because they were scavenging for supplies. However, he agrees to take them back to their house, which was surrounded in barbed wire for protection. A woman named Kate was running this place, but she claims the same thing, that they don't have any medicine or other supplies they could spare. She demands the rifle back from Selena, but she doesn't want to hand it over, not unless they get something in return. Clint convinces her to trust him, saying they need to give the rifle back and trust Kate. They are in a desperate situation. After a short introduction, Kate points them towards a nearby town, around 3 hours away, where they'll find a chemist who can help with medicine. Kate also wants to keep Derek with them, remarking that they won't get far on foot if they drag him along. It's best to let him rest with them. Selena has her doubts, but Clint asks her to trust him, remarking that if she hadn't given up the rifle, she could have gotten shot by a sniper sitting on the top floor of the house. Kate also wants them to leave the truck parked inside. There's no point in losing another working vehicle because, according to her, nobody who went into the town has ever come back. Even though she doesn't like any of this, Selena agrees to everything, trusting Clint and his decision to do so. They have a small argument on the way there, and she claims that the only reason she's still alive is because she had to take some tough decisions, which includes leaving people behind, even friends. Eventually, they find the nearby town, but it was rather big, so they needed a map. Luckily, they find one in an abandoned car, but they need to locate the street that Kate told them about before it gets dark. A house with red bricks is what she told them, but when they opened the door, the place looked abandoned. Out of nowhere, a boy named Douglas comes out, asking if her name is Selena. Douglas is Kate's son, and he got stuck here 2 days ago, when he and his father came looking for supplies. Kate wanted them to bring her son back home, and the thing about the chemist was a lie. He and his mother were talking over the radio, and Selena was pissed that she was lied to. Kate threatens to kill Derek if they fail to bring him back alive, but Selena isn't going back without some medicine. She tells the boy to follow her orders and keep his mouth shut and also keep his hands to himself. A group of infected break open a window and storm inside, and the group runs for their lives. They find refuge in a bigger room, but they need to block the entrance. The barricade wasn't going to last much longer, and they needed to think fast. Luckily, there is a ladder leading upstairs, but it wasn't in the best shape and was very unstable. During the tense escape, Douglas falls down and gets stuck behind a fence next to tens of infected who were trying to eat him alive. Selena takes action and climbs down to get to him, using her clothes to make a small rope. This was enough to reach Douglas, and he climbs over until he reaches the staircase once again. They push one of the infected through the window, and then climb on top of the building. They then jump from building to building, getting as far away as possible from that warehouse. Selena eventually finds a pharmacy and they go inside to search for anything they can use. Unfortunately, this place isn't safe and one of the infected jumps them from the shadows. Douglas was talking to his mother, reassuring her that he is safe, but during the altercation the radio goes cold. Kate thinks that something happened to her son and goes upstairs where Derek was sleeping. She wants to end him in his sleep, claiming that what she's doing is not killing, but showing mercy. But the group isn't dead. They are still alive and trying to escape the horde of zombies that was chasing them. They survive by jumping into the nearby river and swimming all the way to the other side. Luckily, the current was strong, which takes the infected downstream and away from them. Eventually, they return home and Kate couldn't be happier that her son was still alive. Clint finds knife marks on his friend's neck, but Kate claims he was accidentally scratched when they put him to bed. Kate agrees to let them stay for a few days until Derek feels better. She's grateful for bringing her son back alive, even though Selena wanted to leave him behind. Derek eventually starts feeling better and even makes some jokes about his condition, even though his vision wasn't getting any better. Selena doesn't want to take him with them all the way to London, remarking that they will just throw his life away in the heart of infected territory. But Clint doesn't want to give up on his mission of finding out the truth and wants them to finish it together. Douglas asks Selena if he can come with them, remarking that his mother is an asshole and that his dad was killed because of her. She wants him to stay here with his family where it's safe. Where they go, it's much too dangerous for him. Derek asks Clint to leave him behind. What good is a blind man during an outbreak like this? But he is his friend, and Clint will never abandon him, especially since there are bears in the woods. Even though Selena told him no, Douglas ran away from home and they waited for him down the road. They eventually take him along, and Derek tells the bear joke again. If they run into a bear in the woods, they don't need to outrun the bear. They only need to outrun the slowest member of the group, which in their case is the blind man. After driving for a few hours, they hear a helicopter flying above them and they stop to hide. A group of soldiers get out to search the car, but they find nothing but clothes inside. The engine is still warm and Captain Stiles wants them to search the nearby woods and find them. It's the same guys that blew their ship and killed the others, but why are they so interested in finding them? After finding nothing, the soldiers return to the helicopter, but the captain wasn't happy at all. He shoots the tires, rendering the car useless, and then goes back to base to refuel. The soldiers think their boss has issues, but whatever his reasons are, they wouldn't want to be in Selena's shoes. Upon returning, they find the car totaled, but they still don't understand why the army is interested in them so much. They agree to continue the journey on foot, using the forest as cover to cover their tracks, while Derek remarks that there's more than bears in the woods. When a group of soldiers passes by, they are forced to hide among the bodies of the infected and pretend to be dead. The plan works and the soldiers have no idea they were still alive, but one of them notices that some of the bodies are fresher than others. Eventually they leave, remarking that setting up traps didn't yield great results. Maybe they should do what the Brits did in Manchester. The group gets up, checking for blood marks and possible contaminations, and Clint thinks that these soldiers weren't looking for them. They wouldn't make camp inside infected territory and would use helicopters to look for them, but there hasn't been any sign of helicopters for hours. Maybe it's the CIA. All of them had American accents, or maybe the Rangers or the SEALs. Douglas suggests going west to a nearby river and using a boat to travel downstream, but Derek doesn't want to hear about boats anymore. The group takes a break and Derek goes to pee, but he gets close to an edge and nearly falls inside a hole. Unknowingly, he pisses on top of an infected which was trapped in the hole, scaring the piss out of him. This was actually a trap meant to capture infected people, and Derek nearly fell into one. He was very lucky he didn't. The night draws near and the group finds an abandoned cabin in the middle of the forest, and they decide to spend the night. Derek doesn't want to get warm under the blanket with the others and prefers to stay alone in a corner by himself. Selena wakes up in the middle of the night and he claims there is something out there. He was right, because a truck was right in front of the cabin, illuminating the cabin entirely. This place was used as a trap by soldiers to capture infected people, but now they were the only ones sleeping inside. One of them comes out of nowhere and charges towards the soldiers, who zap it using his shotgun. He then uses a stick and takes him inside the truck, just as humans deal with cattle when loading them into trucks. Derek wants them to give up. Even if they get captured, at least they're gonna be taken out of the quarantine zone. But Selena isn't too sure about that. After what happened on the boat, they might do more than just take them prisoners. Douglas interrupts their argument, thinking the sun was coming out, but it wasn't the sunrise that he was seeing. It was a giant fire that lit up the entire forest. In just a couple of minutes, the fire had spread all over the forest, and the group was forced to abandon the safety of the cabin. As if this wasn't bad enough, the infected were trying to escape as well and were chasing them. The only thing worse than infected people are infected people who are on fire and can do even more damage. Selena does her best to kill as many of them as she can, using her machete to deal most of the damage, but eventually they are forced to use the pistols, even though they were low on bullets. Suddenly, a group of soldiers comes out of nowhere, wearing masks and demanding them to stop killing the infected. The soldiers were speaking American English and the leader was racist towards Selena. They are the ones who ignited the fire because they wanted to draw out the infected and capture them, but now their plan is delayed. They offer to take them back to base, or leave them to burn in the middle of the forest, and the group decides to tag along. The ride back to base isn't friendly, and Douglas doesn't understand how the soldiers can talk about baseball and placing bets when his country is being destroyed. The group was taken prisoner, but they are quickly separated just as soon as they arrive. While the others are taken to a holding area, Selena is taken to see Dr. Billingsworth. The doctor wants to take a sample of her blood because he wants to make sure she isn't infected. Apparently, you can be a carrier even though you are not infected. That's because some people are actually immune to the infection. Selena agrees to let the doctor do his job, but when he is finished, she breaks his nose with her elbow. She is knocked unconscious by the soldier and then taken to prison where the others are. While unconscious, she has a dream about working in her garden and her neighbor Kirk coming to help. He wanted to give her better tools, but while he was searching in the shed, she sees the machete sitting on the shelf. It's the same machete that Selena is now using to stay alive and fend off the infected people. After waking up, the group talks about what just happened, and they think the doctor is trying to find a cure. The soldiers take her back to the lab and the doctor confirms that she isn't infected. She gets angry again, mostly because he was American and disrespecting her country, while claiming the country doesn't exist anymore. He wants to place her on the table and do something to her, but during the altercation, he finds out that her name is Selena. Apparently somebody's been looking for her, Captain Styles, and he wants to kill her personally, so he decides to leave her alone for the moment. The doctor recognizes her as well, one of the Manchester Three, but he doesn't understand why she came back here after she escaped. However, what Selena doesn't understand is why Captain Styles wants to kill her. She doesn't even know who he is. The doctor isn't working on a cure. Instead, they are trying to perfect the virus and eliminate the mindlessness and the hemorrhaging, while leaving the power and the focus of purpose. They want to weaponize the virus, and the only way to do it is by experimenting on people. Since he can't use her as his guinea pig, he asks the soldier to bring in Douglas, the young boy. Douglas doesn't understand what's happening to him and is very scared, but the soldiers don't care. The doctor takes a syringe and injects him, allowing the virus to take over his body and infect him just like the others. In only a couple of seconds, the young boy turns into a mindless beast filled with rage. Selena is taken back with the others, but she can't stop herself from crying, blaming herself for what happened to Douglas. One of the soldiers says they need to wrap up the experiments and evacuate as soon as possible because the fire they started earlier was quickly heading their way. They only have about an hour left and they need to move fast, but that's plenty of time to experiment on Clint and Derek. They decide to leave Selena alive, but they don't want to take her with them. Instead, they will abandon her to burn alive. The soldier goes back for the two guys, but they were prepared for him and ambush him together. During the altercation, Derek shoots him in the head, even though he was blind and could have hit Selena instead. She tells the two men to steal one of the two Hummers and wait for her because she has to do something first. She goes back into the lab and slits Douglas's throat, instantly killing him. But that's not all. She uses his blood and throws it at the doctor, infecting him and one of the guards. The virus spreads quickly and they only have a few seconds before the virus takes over them. She refuses to kill the doctor and instead leaves him to burn alive in the lab. The fire was now spreading inside the base and the remaining soldiers were too busy to pay attention to their escape. Selena opens the biohazard door where they were keeping tens of infected people, and they quickly overrun the base, attacking the soldiers who were trying to escape with the helicopter. The group escapes using one of the Hummers, while the base burns to the ground and the remaining soldiers try to make a run for it. After driving for several hours, the Hummer hits something and gets a flat tire. They initially think it was a piece of a shopping cart, but Clint quickly finds a couple of bullet holes in one of the tires, probably from catching a stray bullet when they were escaping the camp. Selena and Derek get into a heated argument and she wants to hit him after he blames her for getting Douglas killed, but she manages to calm down. Luckily, they quickly find another abandoned car, only this time it was something faster and much fancier, an Aston Martin. Clint doesn't want to let Selena drive again, so he quickly goes inside, but unfortunately for him, he goes on the wrong side because in England the driving wheel is on the right side. They've only covered around 100 kilometers since everything started and Selena drives carelessly, trying to make up some time. However, one of the bridges was partially destroyed, and they nearly fall into the freezing river below. Half of the car is dangling off the edge, while the people slowly get out, trying to keep the balance and prevent it from falling. Selena is the last to get out, and the car tips over, nearly throwing her over the edge. Derek gets on top of it to balance the weight distribution, while Clint grabs her hand and pulls her up. They got lucky because the car falls off the edge just as she was rescued. They break into a nearby grocery store that had plenty of supplies, including potato chips and antibiotics for medicine. Since driving hasn't been working out great for them, the group heads to the nearby train station since Derek wanted to be a train mechanic before choosing journalism as his profession. The place was stacked with dead bodies and the stench was unbearable. However, what the group fails to realize is that not all of these bodies are completely dead and some infected were still alive. Derek tries to get the train started while Selena checks the train for possible dangers. She quickly runs into a dozen infected and they chase her into the first wagon. They are able to close the door, but it won't hold on forever and they quickly needed to find a solution. The train was already started and jumping out at this speed will most likely break their legs. Derek says they can decouple the locomotive from the rest of the train, but because of a stupid safety measure, it needs to be done from both sides, and one of them has to stay behind and do it manually. They have less than 30 seconds before the infected break through the door and attack them. Derek decides to stay behind, claiming he's been a dead weight to them ever since he was blinded in the explosion. Even though Clint doesn't want to abandon his friend, if he doesn't do this, they are all going to die soon. Derek and Selena push the button at the same time, decoupling the locomotive and leaving the rest of the train behind. He was powerless to do anything to save himself as the pack of infected swarms his wagon and attacks him. He used to be Clint's best friend and the man starts crying, mourning his friend's death. The train eventually arrives in Edinburgh and the two of them safely leave the train station, leaving this tragic moment behind them. They stumble upon an abandoned bar and decide to go inside and have a few drinks. Just before deciding to stay behind, Derek whispered something in Selena's ear. He thanked her for keeping him alive all this time and not leaving him behind. The two of them continued the journey on the empty streets, but they weren't alone. Two people were following them. They find a car that still had the keys and decide to steal it, but something is off. Suddenly, two guys jump from the shadows and threaten them, asking them to surrender. But Selena refuses to give and fights back, using the car door to break one of the guys' hands. Clint surprises the other one from behind and points a gun to his head, forcing him to surrender. They don't want to kill them, they just want the keys to the car so they can get away from this city. Even though they were following a map, the streets were blocked and they couldn't get through. These blockades were not made by accident. Someone's been doing this intentionally, stacking up cars on top of each other to prevent anyone from getting in or out of the city. They come across a gruesome sight. A couple of people were hanged on top of a bridge and a sign that read, "Glasgow, go home." Captain Styles from earlier, who wanted to kill Selena, was following their tracks and finds the train. Upon going inside, he finds Derek's body on the ground, but there was no sign of the others. On the streets of Edinburgh, Selena and Clint were ambushed by 3 other cars who surround them. However, they were not trying to hunt them. Instead, they were being led somewhere. Eventually, they run out of places to drive and a couple of men surround them. It was the same guys from earlier, but this time they brought backup. Raj is their leader and he wants to know what they are doing in his city. He quickly realizes that Clint is American and not from Glasgow, so maybe they've made a mistake. Instead of killing them, Raj wants to take them to their hideout and introduce them to King Dixon, the person running this place. After the outbreak started, a drug-dealing, murdering gangster took over part of the city and turned it into his kingdom, proclaiming himself as the new king. In exchange for his protection, the people are loyal to him and obey his commands. They've been in a constant war with people from Glasgow who constantly attack them and steal their supplies. Raj warns them to be nice and not have an attitude, or he might just kill them. The king wasn't happy with Raj, claiming he ordered him to kill on sight everyone from Glasgow and not take them as prisoners. But Clint and Selena are not from Glasgow, they're just passing through and he wanted to spare them. Dixon accuses them of breaking into his bar and stealing his alcohol, but she isn't impressed and calls him names. The king demands compensation and decides to confiscate some of their supplies, including all of the weapons, medicine, and even Selena's sentimental earrings. She gets pissed again and confronts him, so he wants to shoot her, but Raj steps in and saves her life once again. The king gives the earrings to his girlfriend, but he still wants compensation for attacking one of his people. He promises to let both of them leave if she can survive one night in the mannequin. Left without any options, Selena agrees and promises to return in the morning and save Clint. Raj knows that King Dixon is a treacherous bastard, but he'll keep his word if she does what he wants. The mannequin is a cage in the middle of the city with a safe spot in the middle. They want to lock her inside and ask her to stand up straight and not move an inch. She is safe in the middle and the infected won't be able to grab her, but if she sits or moves, she's a dead woman. Daylight quickly turns to night and Selena can hear the infected walking through the empty streets, getting closer and closer. The cage is quickly surrounded on all sides and the infected try their best to get to her, but just as promised, The middle of the cage was a safe spot and they couldn't get to her. To cope with the severity of her situation, she starts hallucinating, imagining herself having fun in a bar alongside Douglas and the other people that were killed on the way. Her husband appears and warns her not to cross the line, remarking that he's there to help her concentrate. However, she feels tired and just wants to give up, leaving the infected to take her and hopefully end her suffering. Her hallucinations end and she is transported back into the cage, surrounded by tens of infected itching to taste her flesh. A group of people from Glasgow, the same people who've been at war with King Declan, see her locked inside the cage and decide to help. One of them creates a diversion and draws the infected to chase after her, freeing access to the cage. The people rush to free Selena, but they thought she was one of their people. The lady that ran away creates an even bigger diversion, causing a massive explosion that could be heard in the entire neighborhood. The people from Glasgow want to attack King Declan and steal some of his supplies, but Selena wants no part in this. She runs away to deal with her own stuff, but thanks them for saving her. Raj brings some food for Clint, who tells him the truth, that he is a reporter who came to England to write a story about the infection and everything that happened afterwards. Raj had no idea that other parts of the world were safe and only England was under quarantine. King Declan heard the explosion and rushed to see what was going on. He accuses Raj of lying to him, claiming that Clint is from Glasgow. Why else would his people try and save him? Raj goes back to the room and frees Clint, who runs to the mannequin to find Selena if she's still alive. It didn't take long for them to find each other as she was coming back to rescue him. Before leaving, she storms inside the king's room and threatens his mistress, demanding that she returns her earrings. The entire kingdom was in chaos as the fight between the king's army and the people from Glasgow was in full swing. Clint wants to help, but Selena convinces him to just run away and save their own asses. Leaving good people behind is never easy and she has to live with her actions for a very long time, something that Clint will just have to learn to do. Luckily, they are able to steal a car and drive out of the city, but eventually they stop to take a break. She hasn't slept all night and she was dead tired. After waking up, they drive for a few more hours, but they eventually run out of gas and decide to continue the journey on foot. They find some cows stranded on the field eating grass, and Clint suggests killing one of them and eating it. But they are only 2 people and that would be too much for them to handle. Selena doesn't want to cause any waste. They occupy their time by arguing who was bigger, Elvis Presley or the Beatles. Surprisingly, they come across an isolated apple tree brimming with beautiful red apples. They haven't eaten in some time and these apples were enough to quench their hunger. An army plane was flying above them, but it was too high in the sky to spot them on the ground, so they were safe for now. They stumble across a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, so they decide to go inside and check for supplies. The owner was infected, but he wasn't a real danger because he was starving to death. After taking everything they could find, the 2 of them continued the long journey to London, this time taking the old truck that belonged to the farmer. The next town was just as empty as the previous one, so they decide to go inside one of the houses. They find a video recorder and a TV next to it, which had the sign "Play Me" glued on top. When the outbreak began, a man recorded a message for his wife Janice, telling her to get to her mom's house as soon as she can and to avoid traveling at night. He was supposed to join her later there, and the 2 of them wonder if the couple ever found each other again. This was their first lucky day in weeks. This place was packed with supplies including canned foods and medicine. On top of that, they had plenty of fresh clothes for them to wear and even toilet paper, something they hadn't seen since the mission began. But that wasn't all, the place still had running water and Derek prepared a hot bath for Selena. As soon as she got inside, she started crying, remembering the beautiful life before everything went to shit. In the morning, everything seemed fine, but Selena had a feeling that someone was watching them. They go outside and sneak their way behind the houses, trying to get back to the car. Upon going inside, they realize that the keys were missing, even though she left them in the ignition. Someone was hunting them, and they are in big trouble. They needed to get somewhere safe. They find another car sitting in the driveway, but it's too dangerous to try and get to it during the day. They wait for nighttime, and they were right to be suspicious, because they see a light in one of the houses. It was Captain Styles, the same one who's been following them for the past couple of days, trying to find Selena. They lure him into one of the houses by lighting a fire inside one of the televisions, which gave them a couple of minutes, enough for them to get inside the car and drive away. However, the captain jumps inside his Hummer and follows them closely, forcing Clint to do something about it. He takes the rifle and gets on top of the car, trying to shoot the captain inside the Hummer, but the soldier shoots back and hits him straight in the shoulder. Luckily, one of Derek's bullets hits the Hummer's tire, forcing the captain to stop the pursuit and fix his flat. They stop inside the Cumbia medical group, while Selena tries to disinfect Clint's wound, which luckily wasn't very serious. He thanks her for saving his life so many times. If it wasn't for her, he'd be dead a long time ago. They need to find another car, but while they were searching the empty streets, They run across a wall filled with pictures of missing people. Funny enough, they find a picture of the same couple from the house earlier, but this time it was the wife, remembering her dead husband and wishing to see him again in heaven. Out of nowhere, another Hummer comes driving towards them and a couple of soldiers ambush them. They wanted to make sure they aren't infected, so they asked them a few questions to see if they can speak. These soldiers are part of NATO's defense force, tasked with patrolling the nearby towns and clearing them of any infected they can find. They offer to take them back to London, where the army has secured a small area for the return of British citizens, while NATO cleans up the corpses from the rest of the country. They are surprised to see that Derek had a bullet wound in his right shoulder, and they were curious to know who shot them, but before they could explain, Captain Styles shows up in his truck. The soldiers don't recognize him and order him to ID himself, realizing that something is off about him. Now finally face to face, Selena still doesn't know who he is or why he's after her, trying to kill her. Styles claims he is working for Her Majesty's Armed Forces and demands that they return Selena over to him. However, the soldiers don't trust him, and one of them recognizes he is using fake IDs and uniform. But before they could arrest him, Styles takes out his knife and kills one of them, and then takes his rifle to shoot the rest. In just a couple of seconds, the captain was able to kill the NATO soldiers while Selena and Clint hide in the nearby buildings. Clint comes up with another plan. This time he wants the two of them to split up, sending Selena alone to draw him out, while he sneaks up from behind and tries to steal the Hummer. Selena doesn't like his plan, calling it dangerous and reckless, but she agrees to follow through. The fight from earlier didn't leave Captain Styles unharmed, and he was trying to stop the bleeding while Selena sneaks into the building next door. The plan is working, and Clint is able to reach the Hummer where the soldiers were killed, and even steals one of their weapons. Selena breaks inside the building, but the place was filled with rotten corpses, and there wasn't anywhere to hide. Styles follows her inside and sees her red bandana in the middle of the bodies, but when he picks it up, it was just another dead body rotting on the floor. Thinking that she must have run away, he decides to leave, but she was actually still there, hiding underneath more dead bodies. She then reunites with Clint, who stole the captain's Hummer, but what they find inside shocks her to her core. He had a file containing information about her entire life, ever since she was a little girl. Pictures of her wearing a cute pink dress, together with her parents. Pictures that go way back to elementary school. And even a lot of newspaper clippings about her escape from the Worsley house. They drive all the way to the docks and decide to jump aboard one of the boats, even though Clint is now terrified of being on the open sea. Disposing of the truck was easy enough. Selena just drove it into the water, causing it to sink to the bottom. Sailing at nighttime isn't a good idea, but spending the night at the docks is dangerous. Captain Styles might jump them. They dock somewhere in the open sea, hundreds of meters from the shoreline, while waiting for daylight to continue the journey. Selena finds a picture of her wedding day and gets emotional, remembering her husband David and what a good husband he was to her. Clint asks permission to keep the photo of her dressed in the pink dress, remarking that she looks kinda cute dressed like that. They both fall asleep cuddling on the bed, but the captain refused to give up and swam all the way to the boat. He ambushed both of them and surprised them in the early hours of the morning. He threatens them with his army knife, recounting how brutal the Vikings used to be, insinuating that if he wanted to, he could kill them in an instant. He orders Clint to go on the deck, but Selena tries to fight back, so he slaps her across the face. He quickly deals with her and then takes Clint outside and orders him to jump in the water or risk getting shot. They were quite far from the shore and he wasn't going to make it by swimming alone, but Styles doesn't care. The captain accuses her of killing a good friend of his, Major Henry West, the same guy who tried to rape her while she was a prisoner at the Worsley house. He wants to take her back to Manchester, claiming they have unfinished business there. As soon as they arrived on the other side, Selena made a run for it, trying to get as far away as possible, but the captain wasn't playing, and a single gunshot into the air is enough to deter her from escaping. She wants him to get it over with, but not just yet. First, he wants her to do as he says, and if she refuses, he's very skilled in torturing people and won't hesitate to make her death excruciating. As soon as they leave, Clint arrives at the docks, but swimming all the way here got him extremely tired, and he couldn't move any longer. He is quickly surrounded by NATO soldiers, part of the same group that Captain Styles killed earlier. They think he and Selena killed their colleagues and want to know where she went, but that's not what happened. Styles is being an asshole and forces Selena to carry his bag. The guys from the helicopter earlier are all CIA operatives, and he thought that because Derek was blind, he would slow them down more, but they managed to escape for so long. He claims the only reason he didn't take her machete yet is because she's within 5 feet of him, which means the machete belongs to him, and he can take it anytime he wants. Selena calls Major Henry West a rapist and a murderer, which pisses the captain off even more. He threatens to rape her just like the Major wanted to do, but if he tries, Selena's gonna pluck his eye from his skull. The NATO soldiers talk it over and think that Clint is telling the truth, but there is only one way of knowing for sure. They need to find Selena and find out if Captain Styles is really the one who killed their partners. Clint overhears them talking about going to Manchester, but he has no idea where exactly. They're just gonna have to get lucky. Manchester was completely devastated. When the outbreak began, the military destroyed the city in hopes of containing the infection from spreading. Selena goes inside one of the shops to pick up another head bandana after she left hers with the corpses earlier. The NATO soldiers pass by in their truck and she tries screaming for help, but the captain knocks her air out, causing her to nearly black out on the ground. He then ties her hands up and threatens to cut off her tongue if she doesn't shut up. After walking for several hours, their true destination is finally revealed. He took her back to the same house where she was kept a prisoner by Major West, back to the Worsley house. He wants her to take him to where she killed his friend, because he wants to see the body with his own eyes. While the captain gets emotional, she manages to free herself and attacks him one final time, but he easily deals with her, knocking her on the ground a second time. She then snatches the Major's chains and runs outside, while Styles calls her pathetic and childish. She throws them over the fences and then goes on her knees, claiming she's ready to die and wants him to finish it. The captain goes to pick them up, but is unaware of the bombs that are buried in the ground. Unfortunately for him, he steps in one of them and gets blown to pieces, much to Selena's satisfaction. Body pieces flying everywhere, and she smiles on the ground, content to have finally gotten rid of him. Clint and the other soldiers heard the explosion and came rushing to see what was going on. He hugs her, happy that she's still alive, although the same thing couldn't be said about Captain Styles. The soldiers confirm that Clint's story is actually true and decide to take them back to London, where their safe zone was established. The long journey back to London was mostly quiet. There were no infected or bodies anywhere. The army disposed of most of them. That's why nobody is allowed to leave the safe zone. The city is very big and they still have to clean the rest of it. There are people dressed in hazmat suits, disposing of the bodies and disinfecting the streets. Most of the civilians in the safe zone came from refugee camps outside the country and were processed before coming here. But since Selena and Clint have been on the island, they're gonna need to pass a quick medical evaluation before they are given housing assignments. A beautiful nurse takes some of her blood and checks her vital signs, but so far so good. There is no sign of infection, and if they take their vitamins and supplements, they'll be back to normal in just a few days. Everyone is given starting money so they can go shopping and resume normal life, but she won't be allowed to wear the machete out in public. Clint pretended to be Selena's husband. It's easier if everyone thinks they are together so they won't get separated. However, the city is crawling with armed soldiers, and Selena feels uneasy about seeing so many of them at every corner. Something doesn't feel right. According to one of the soldiers, everyone has a phone inside their rooms so they can call anyone they want, but Clint thinks the calls might be monitored. The room that was assigned to them is beautiful, and there are even lavender flowers which smell incredible. They've smelled nothing but death and decay for so long, they've forgotten how good flowers can even smell. Everything seems to be returning back to normal. Everything except the snipers that are stationed on top of every building in the city. The two of them go out for a walk, but Selena still feels uneasy being around so many people. Clint wants to call his boss in the States and thinks the best way to do it is by using the same phones the soldiers are using. He comes up with another plan, and together with Selena they distract one of the guards inside the mall. She uses her charm to distract him while gently stealing the phone from his pocket without him noticing. Clint immediately calls his boss and tells him everything that happened, including that all of his team is already dead. He's the only one left alive. He doesn't have a computer, so it will take him about a week to write everything down. In the meantime, his boss needs to figure out a way to bring him back home. They go back home, and Selena says she's not coming back to the States with him. The only reason she agreed to be his guide to London was because she has unfinished business and needs to do it alone. Clint tries to talk her out of it, and they end up sharing a passionate kiss together. They spend the night making love, but Selena sneaks out during the early hours of the morning, leaving nothing but a note and her machete behind. She apologizes for lying to him, but she can't stay in London. She has to finish something personal, while he has to go back to the States and publish his story. Clint was left with only a few photos of her from when she was a little girl. He goes outside and runs into Charles and his wife Janice, the same man who recorded the video for his wife, asking her to meet him at her mother's. He was surprised that they were both alive and were able to find each other in all this chaos. Chaos erupts as a soldier comes running through, claiming that someone escaped the safe zone last night and they are trying to find them. Clint automatically assumes he was referring to Selena, who ran away last night, but it wasn't her. Meanwhile, Selena goes back to her home, but the place was in rough shape and she instantly gets emotional upon seeing it. She remembers going home when the outbreak began and finding her husband desperately packing their clothes, claiming there are riots everywhere in the city and people are dying. He wanted to take the quickest flight out of England, but Selena couldn't find her passport. While they were searching for it, an infected person broke through the window and stormed inside. In the present, Clint becomes friends with one of the soldiers, who tells him that 2 kids escaped the safe zone last night because they wanted to search for their mother. They found the mother sitting in their home, but the soldier doesn't know if she was infected or not. Clint is happy to know that he wasn't talking about Selena and that she probably made it without them knowing anything. In the past, the infected person jumped towards David, violently hitting him against the desk, but he fought back, using the lamp to smack him over the head. Sadly, he was bitten during the altercation, and it only took a few seconds for the virus to take over his body. He quickly turned into one of them and then attacked Selena. She didn't know what was going on and reacted mostly out of instinct. She used a wooden stick to stab her husband, impaling him in the chest and instantly killing him. Her neighbor heard the noises and came walking through the door, but he claimed that the person she killed wasn't her husband anymore. He was something else. He gave her his machete and said that she would need it to defend herself from now on to survive. David was still in her home, impaled on the stick and hanging on the wall. Back in the safe zone, things were quickly turning from good to bad, and the people were panicking. Clint packs up his stuff and takes the machete with him, thinking he's gonna need it soon. Selena takes her husband outside and buries him in the backyard alongside her favorite earrings, a present from him, signaling that it's time to leave the past behind and move on with her life. The soldiers rounded up every civilian within the safe zone and locked them inside parking garages. They claimed it was for their own safety, but somehow this didn't make the people feel much safer. Suddenly the lights go out and there was a loud cracking noise, as if a door was opening. Out of nowhere, many infected people come running inside, attacking and biting anyone they could get their hands on. Selena looks at her family pictures one final time, remembering the good times she and her husband spent together, and then she lights the house on fire, burning it to the ground. The infection spreads quickly as more and more people are turned, but many of them manage to escape by running topside on the streets. However, the streets weren't safe at all. Sniper soldiers were shooting everything and anyone who was moving down below, infected and non-infected people alike. Clint tries to help Charles carry his wounded wife, but one of the bullets hits her straight in the head, killing her on the spot. Clint kills off a couple of infected and then convinces the husband to leave his wife behind and follow him. He also calls his boss from the States, asking for his help, saying that the infection got loose and the soldiers are shooting everyone, infected or not. Selena eventually goes back to London and sees one of the snipers shooting people on the streets. She sneaks up behind him and wants to knock him unconscious, but the man falls on the ground and begins puking. He feels sorry about killing people. He didn't sign up for this, he was just following orders. He puts a gun to his head and wants to blow his own brains out. But Selena tells him to hurry up because the infected are closing in, and she needs his gun. He chooses not to kill himself and starts shooting towards the infected, but he gets quickly overrun. Selena desperately tries to get away and jumps from the top of the building to a nearby building. But one infected was right after her. Luckily, she makes the jump unharmed, but she wasn't out of danger just yet. There are helicopters patrolling everywhere, shooting everyone on sight. Clint and Charles run into a back alley, desperately trying to survive, but Charles wants to give up, saying he doesn't want to live without his wife. The infected people find them, and Clint drops his machete while he was trying to climb a fence. He falls on the ground and accepts his fate, but he wasn't alone anymore because Selena finds him and picks up the machete. She goes to town on the infected and quickly takes them out, leaving Clint in shock. The two of them run towards a nearby river, and Clint wants to know how long she can hold her breath. 2 fighter jets were instructed to fire rockets towards the safe zone and deal with the infection by purging the streets. The water provided enough cover for the 2 of them to survive the scorching fires, and they make it out in one piece. Clint was happy that she came back for him a second time, and they share a passionate kiss in the middle of the river. However, they were still not out of danger, and the streets were still crawling with the infected. A group of soldiers wearing hazmat suits appear and begin torching them, burning everyone and anything moving on the streets. If there is one thing worse than infected people, it's infected people who are now on fire. Selena's neighbor was right. The machete saved her life more times than she could remember, and has never failed her. They sneak inside one of the buildings and climb towards the top floors when they notice something on the streets below. The military decide to gas London in a desperate measure to try and limit the infection from spreading, and they were in great danger. Clint remembers an old trick he learned a long time ago and asks Selena to piss on a couple of towels. He wants to wrap the piss-covered towels around their mouths and noses, saying it will help neutralize the gas and they won't die. The stench was horrible and they could barely tolerate it, but Clint is confident that if anyone is going to survive this, it's going to be Selena. His plan worked and it only took a few hours for the gas to disperse, making it safe to walk the streets again. They arrive at the docks and find a boat, but Clint was still uneasy about being on boats, especially after what happened at the start of the mission. The 2 of them managed to escape and they watch the city burning in the background. Luckily, nobody saw them aboard the ship and they spend the night sleeping like babies. In just a couple of hours, they arrive on the shores of France and find some place to stay. While Selena slept like a baby, Clint worked on his story and called his boss again. He arranged for both of them to fly back to the States, but Clint begs his boss to hold off on running the story, at least until they return home safely. Paris feels very strange. The infection didn't reach this far, and the people aren't even aware of what happened in England. Selena decides to wear a pink dress, the same kind that Clint saw in the pictures, and he thinks she looks fabulous. They both agree to leave the past behind, and Selena leaves behind her head bandana, the glasses, and her machete. It's time to move on. She was still anxious and couldn't wait until the plane was off the ground, but apparently there was some delay caused by a helicopter crash. The stewardess reassures them that it's nothing serious, and in a couple of minutes the plane takes off safely, heading to the United States. The couple share another passionate kiss together, but this time they confess their love for each other, claiming they make each other's lives worth living. However, as the plane was heading towards America, the infection had made its way to France, and a pack of infected people were running loose on the streets.